We are following the ongoing investigation into the murder of 16-year-old Trey Wright. The Florence County Sheriff's Office said it's arrested 9 people so far.
At 11:30 p.m. on June 21st of this year, police in Johnsonville, South Carolina responded to a 911 call of a shots fired incident. When they arrived on the scene, they found 16-year-old Trey Wright laying on the ground, having suffered from multiple different gunshot wounds in the road, and they struggled to save this individual's life. However, unfortunately for Trey and his family, he did not survive this encounter. And for a while, this was essentially one of those rural America mysteries. This kid was shot and it didn't appear to be for any discernible reason. Robbery didn't appear to be the motive. So the police were investigating, but the leads did not seem to be leading at that moment in time. However, a little while later, it was discovered that Trey actually had a previous dispute where he was threatened with a firearm from the new boyfriend of his ex-girlfriend, and apparently there may have been some kind of connection to this incident. So what the police ended up doing was investigating those circumstances, but what they ultimately ended up discovering was a plot that involved, as of right now, up to 9 teenagers to murder this child, to lure him to this particular area for this confrontation in order to kill him. And even though the gunman is the 19-year-old boyfriend of Trey's former girlfriend, it appears the mastermind behind this whole plot is his 16-year-old high school girlfriend who was a cheerleader at said high school. And this is what we're going to break down today. This kind of youth violence that honestly is very rare in the United States of America. Typically, when we hear teen violence, we don't get a description of the teens or anything of the sort, and we all kind of know what that means. But in this particular case, not only do we have a description, not only do we have harsh charges for each and every person involved, but we also have named and shamed the alleged perpetrators in this particular incident. So I think that is also worthy of commentary. So we're going to break this down. We're going to get into it. But before we do, I want to thank everybody who supports this channel via actualjusticewarrior.com/join. So one of the things that I can't help but notice about the young Mr. Trey Wright, the victim in the case that we're talking about today, is that he looks a lot like Dustin from Stranger Things, like not an exact replica, but in reality, very close to the approximate. So I think that this is one of the reasons why this case got so much attention. Again, this appeared to be a rising star at his school, a sophomore, had his whole life ahead of him, beloved by family and friends. However, his life was taken in this ridiculous plot that appeared to be a revenge plot that was perpetuated by his ex-girlfriend who had already found another person. And by the way, for the trigger man in this particular case, the 19-year-old that is dating a 16-year-old, you are an incredible loser if these allegations are proven to be true, because you're killing the ex-boyfriend on behalf of your girlfriend, when in reality that just shows that that girlfriend cares more about him than she does about you. So you're losing out to a 16-year-old in your pursuit of a 16-year-old, and it is by definition the essence of weakness in my humble opinion. But in addition to what I just stated right there being an absolute fact, one of the other ways that they were able to identify so many suspects in this particular case was due to the fact that the confrontation, which everybody expected to escalate to deadly force, according to the charges, was videotaped. These teens did the thing that teens do, where they whipped out their phones in an intense situation and captured it from multiple different angles. So this poor boy's mother is going to have to live with the reality that the video of her son's murder is just going to be out there eventually as the cases progress and as this gets entered into evidence. Because make no mistake about it, everybody that has been arrested so far has been charged as an adult, and because of that, this is going to be a matter of public record.
Well, Edward, behind bars and without bond, Devin Raper was the first arrested for the murder of 16-year-old Trey Wright after he was accused of shooting and killing the teen. On Tuesday, police charged 17-year-old Sydney Kearns, 18-year-old Hunter Kendall, and 18-year-old Corinne Belviso with murder. Belviso and Kearns posted bond today.
So our main suspect in this particular crime today is somebody called Devin Raper. And no, I'm not joking about that name. You just heard it uttered by the local news. And while I'm not an expert on the correlation or causation in reality between your namesake and the crimes that you will ultimately end up committing, what I will say is that based on that name alone, based on his mugshot, I am willing to declare, after of course he is adjudicated to be guilty, if that is proven to be true, that this man is definitely guilty. He is 100% the did do in this particular situation, and I say that with all the confidence of knowing that according to the charging documents, this is captured on video from multiple different angles, and it appears that they have him dead to rights. But as of right now, technically it is alleged innocent until proven guilty. We all understand that, but I also think it is quite remarkable, as in I will be making remarks on it, that we have the names and we've seen the faces of the overwhelming majority of these perpetrators, even the ones that are under the age of 18. Consider that a contrast to what we often see in the local news media, and in fact, one of the things that I commented on previously in a local news media report, where one of the Kia boys crashed a car into the house of another individual, and that person who owned the home was going to be stuck with the bill, where the local news media thought it was prudent to blur the entirety of this person's body, because even seeing the 16-year-old sweatshirt would have been too much and stoked up too much evil white racism for you guys out there in the audience. But all of these kids, named and shamed. And by the way, this is something that I 100% endorse. If you think I'm on board with teen violence because every teen involved in this particular instance is a white person, you're an absolute idiot. I'm obviously against these individuals, but I also think it's important to highlight the ringleader in this, or the alleged ringleader, which of course is the former girlfriend of Trey and the current girlfriend of Mr. Raper, Raper's girlfriend.
Gianna Kistenmacher, Trey's girlfriend, was the second person arrested. She's accused of leading Raper to Wright the night he died. The former cheerleader was released to home detention and cannot use the internet. We're told Belviso was also a member of Kistenmacher's cheerleading team.
Now look, the local news lady is obviously struggling with her words throughout the course of this segment, and we all understand that the name of the primary suspect, the trigger man in this particular instance, is playing a big role in her just fumbling her words. Obviously, it's just awkward to say a name like Devin throughout the course of this particular segment. Just kidding, we all know it is the last name. It's the thing that caught me off guard when I was watching this segment. That is tripping her up. But we also see the girlfriend, the person who is supposedly at the center of all this, and we get a good look at this former cheerleader, and at least I can say, based on look alone, because this is what I'm basing it on, even though there's overwhelming evidence, including video evidence, I understand why a bunch of people would follow this girl. She is clearly and obviously the pretty girl compared to all the other females in the mugshot. She is a cheerleader, or was a cheerleader at her school at the time that this particular crime went down. So it's all starting to add up. But again, this is a perfect example of why you should never simp for women. It doesn't matter how cute they are, even at the high school level. In reality, it will lead you astray. And you young men out there in the audience really need to understand what I'm laying down right here. You really need to get on board with my anti-simp cult. I will be selling memberships. We will call it Sean's Hustlers University, and you guys will be able to sign up for the low price of $10,000 a month. Again, just go to my PayPal, donate me the money, and then I will give you the courses at some point in time in the future. But in all seriousness, this is obviously an incredibly dark crime. And again, we also have identifying information, names and faces of the people involved very early on at the arrest stage of this particular crime, despite the fact that the suspect they just flashed on screen for us is a 16-year-old. Again, look at the double standards from the local news media when it comes to certain types of crimes, or not necessarily certain types of crimes, but certain types of suspects.
Kistenmacher's cheerleading team. A close friend of Trey's told News 13 Belviso, Karen's, and Kendall were bystanders to the murder.
Now again, the major reason that I'm covering this particular story is because the crime is absolutely heinous, the motive is disgusting, and of course, a family lost their son over a petty teenage dispute dispute that never needed to escalate to this level, and I find that to be horrific. But in addition to that, I also find it incredibly interesting how free and clear everybody feels to show the faces of all these individuals involved. Now, to be clear, they are charged with murder. They are charged with participating in this particular crime. It's actually a felony murder charge for the bulk of the people in this particular case. But notice how the media has no hesitation at all whatsoever with showing you all of the faces from the mugshots of all of the available suspects. Notice how there's no hesitation even when they're reporting that these three individuals that they just flashed right on your screen were bystanders when the crime occurred. Now, of course, a lot of you might be asking, even though we've covered this on this channel before, how could three bystanders also be charged with murder? Now, again, my returning viewers will understand this absolutely clearly, but for new viewers, this is what is often referred to as felony murder law. The idea is that you as a group were all participating in some kind of a felony, so you're acting in concert in said felony, then somebody died as a predictable, logical, possible outcome of said felony, so each and every one of you gets tagged with felony murder. And they actually bring somebody on the local news in order to explain this, and honestly, the South Carolina explanation for felony murder, I actually think is pretty damn badass in terms of the verbiage that was used.
They were complicit in bringing the armed co-defendant Raper to the incident location, knowing that there would be a confrontation, and they knew that Raper had presented a firearm to the victim and made threats to shoot him according to the arrest warrants.
Nunn said one more person is expected to turn themselves in within the next few days.
So we hear from Major Mike Nunn, who's having none of this teenage violence in Florence County at the Sheriff's Department, and he says, look, these people knew that there was a previous threat involving a firearm, and they were complicit in some way in bringing these two parties together, which ultimately ended up leading to the death of Trey Wright. Now, I will also add that it appears as of right now, because this was initially like a mystery shooting, that none of these teenagers actually waited with Mr. Wright as he lay there bleeding out from multiple gunshot wounds. So in my opinion, that also adds a little bit of heinousness to the people in the crowd, wholly disregarding his human life, and I find that to be reprehensible. But again, the case for felony murder here, to me, seems a little bit weaker than what we typically see, and considering we're identifying all these people, we're charging all 9 of them with murder, it seems like there's a bit of a differentiation in the standard from what we see when other teens participate in violence.
Now, according to officials, the decision to charge most of those defendants with murder was not taken lightly.
So the decision was made, again, with investigators in consultation with the solicitor's office, to charge each of them with murder, the hand of one being the hand of all, as part of South Carolina law as well. So that's the basis of the charge for each of those individuals.
Now, that being said, that was the explanation I kind of like for felony murder. The hand of one being the hand of all. I think that sounds kind of epic, if I'm being perfectly honest, even if I don't believe that this is necessarily a solid fit and a solid application of felony murder. So yeah, like we talk about in many of the cases that we cover on this channel, regardless of who the defendants are, sometimes felony murder sounds logical, it fits, it makes perfect sense, it should be applied in certain instances, and other times where you have these kind of fringe cases, I don't really think that felony murder is a solid fit. Are you going to tell me that all 9 of the people who maybe thought they were going to a fight knew that there was a potential for a murder to go down? You're going to tell me that all 9 of the people facilitated and or transported the victim and the defendant, or the primary defendant, since they're all defendants, to the location and had an expectation that it was going to go this way? To me, that's a little bit of a stretch, if I'm being perfectly honest. But notice how in this particular case, without hesitation, they're going for the top charges. And by the way, they said at some point in the segment that all of the defendants are between 17 and 19 years old. That's not actually true. The girlfriend of Trey, the former girlfriend, who apparently is the mastermind, was reportedly 16, maybe at the time of the crime. Maybe she turned 17 now. So that is just not accurate. I don't know why that's in this local news segment. But yeah, it appears that these people in South Carolina, the solicitor, has decided to drop the hammer on these youths. And while I am in general in favor of it, I would like to examine in the future the charging documents as it pertains to the remaining 7 of the 9 defendants to see how solid the felony murder case actually is. Now, I understand the hand of one, or by the hand of one, by the hand of all, is pretty epic, but you know, sometimes epic doesn't actually mean practical and should be enforced.
None told News 13 there is video evidence from the night of Trey's murder. Now, we've asked for the video, but we were not able to get it.
So we just heard right there from Shelby Martin that her local news affiliate actually requested this particular video. They did not receive it at the time that they produced this segment. But again, this is one of the things that makes this crime all the more heartbreaking because it was on video. And while that will help in prosecuting everybody that is involved, eventually that is going to become public information because the trial is public. And it's going to be something that the family of Trey Wright is going to have to deal with for the rest of their lives. Essentially, they're going to be haunted by the echo of their son's murder, and it's absolutely disgusting that that is in fact the case. Now, in addition to that, I know some of you are going to leave comments about Shelby Martin. You're going to say that you find her to be a pretty lady, and honestly, even though you guys are perverted and disgusting and expect me to make commentary about this, I will say I wasn't 100% sold until I caught a little bit of that accent, and now I totally understand what you disgusting perverts mean. But of course, we're gonna leave that issue for you guys out there in the comments, but also if you could comment on the main issue, which is this particular case, the heinousness of the crime, whether or not you think the felony murder charges should be applied here to all 9 co-defendants, and of course, what do you think about the comparative coverage from this local news affiliate by showing the mugshots and the IDs of the underage suspects compared to what we see when the suspects are from a different background. Again, all your thoughts down in the comments below. As per usual, if you like this video, show them by leaving a like, subscribe for more content, follow me on my social medias, support me via the support links in the description of this video. This has been me talking about a crazy case out of South Carolina. Till next time.